When a father is involved in his children's lives, it makes a huge difference, especially for young boys who see their fathers as the concept of what a man is meant to be or their first standard of masculinity. However, sadly, that is not the case for every young boy, as there are boys who are brought up in homes where their fathers are physically absent, and also fathers who are physically there but emotionally absent. Today, I have with me two guests who will be diving into the conversation of fatherless sons. How can we deal with this issue? How can we help young boys, all men in our community who are fatherless sons? Help me welcome first Mr. Kinglsey Obum, who is the anchor and producer of The Manhood Show on CTFM 105.1 FM, and Mr. Deji Irawo, who has a resource hub and counsels men so that they can be better husbands and fathers. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Capture them well. Thank you so much for joining the show. So I think the first thing that I want to just jump in is, what is your idea or definition of what a fatherless son is? Maybe we can start with you, Mr. Kinglsey.
Well, a fatherless son is that boy who hasn't had the privilege of having a male model in his life. He's just existing in a silo when it comes to being a man or not being a man. So he can't define what it means to be a man.
He can't define what it means to be a man. Mr. Deji, can you define? Do you think that there are certain roles that men are meant to carry out for them to be defined as real men, in quotes, in our society?
Yeah, obviously, the place of a man is absolutely, you can't overemphasize how valuable and important a father is in the life of a child. We know that, there are like 4 or 5 basic things a father brings to a child's life that women are not wired to do. Yeah, a sense of identity. It's a father that gives a child a sense of identity. There's an affirmation a son needs from his father, because like Kinglsey was saying, it's your role model. That's the person who teach you what is a male acceptable behavior. Because the rest of your life you will be in various relationships with men, with women, with people around you. So watching your father and how he does it, it begins to guide you on what you think is the acceptable behavior. So when that person is not there, then you have a problem of even knowing what is acceptable behavior, or how a man should behave. So a father does that, he brings that into your life. There's validation, like Kinglsey said, there's mentoring. There's that role model thing that a father brings to the life of a child that these are just core to men, especially when it comes to the boy child. And so if that is not present in his life, obviously he's going to grow up not having that definition from where he should have it. And then obviously if he doesn't have that definition, is a problem. Then how does he relate with society? How does he connect? How does he know is the acceptable standard of what we call rules of engagement, of what it means to be a man? So when that is not in your life, you would find, and then even the all important issue of being loved, it's your father that creates that love environment around you that makes you accept who you are, to let you know that as a child you are loved, you are precious, you are important. The father gives you that sense of security, to a child. And apart from that, provision and protection. Those are things that a father must bring. If something happens to a child now, if you look at children and he just sees harm, he most likely will run towards his father if the two of them were around, and most likely not his mom. So it just lets you know that, that fatherly role in the life of a child is cannot be overemphasized. Right? Those core things of protection, preservation, provision, love, validation, and are very core things here.
Just recently, I think I watched this video where the man was talking about how there are certain things that the mother just can't give. So the mother sort of comforts the child, but the father is the one that disciplines the child in a way. So is that something also that you think that men bring to the table in regards to discipline? Because even in the Nigerian family home, they say, I'm going to report to your father. Then everyone just acts right. So is discipline also a huge thing that boys are meant to have from their fathers?
Well, I also want us to depart a little bit from roles. Okay. You see, the fatherhood in the life of a child begins with the presence. The presence alone, it's a big deal in the life of a child. So the presence is important. Is it a positive presence? Is it an affirming presence, like he said? Is it an affectionate presence? All of these things are things that, your father comes in, he hasn't opened his mouth, but his presence connotes, his presence communicates. So it's not about, I've bought biscuit, I've bought ice cream, I'm in this house. The fact that I'm in this house, I am exuding, I am communicating. So what vibes are these children feeling? That vibes is summarized with the word relationship. So what do they see when I enter the house? How do they feel? So my presence should create something that is memorable, that is compelling, positive. So the things I now do is the next level, which is which is more like affirming, or rather should I say consolidating the presence. So going back to the question of discipline, you see, the father's presence alone provides model for acceptable behavior. It is not until I say, hey, you get the point. Based on our relationship, you should know what daddy doesn't like and what daddy approves of. Now, not what I don't like because it is not right, but what we have been able to accept, or what has evolved as our family values. So father is source. That's another word for father. Now, source of what? Identity, but most importantly, value. Every home should be governed by values, and those values, they are more like the father epitomizes those values. So daddy doesn't insult people when he's driving on the road. It is flowing from a value. So the boy already knows that, hey, daddy doesn't do this. So if he starts to do that, he knows that I am veering off the family values. You get? So I want us to take away from, deviate from the African traditional definition of discipline. Fatherhood is not about stick and cane.
I mean, because when in as much as we want to deviate, the reality on ground is that is what we see.
We need to deconstruct.
Exactly. So that was where I was headed. Because if people see father, they hear disciplinarian. This is someone you are afraid of. Yes, he loves you, but he loves you from afar.
It's a misconstruction. Yes. It's a misconstruction of fatherhood. I will report you to daddy. It's an anomaly. It makes daddy look like a demon, that when he shows up, everybody straightens up. Yeah,
but that is what we see. Is that something not good? Because a lot of people take it as a sign of pride. When I come here, my children act straight.
No, that is not a sign of pride. It is, your children are contained by your presence. And your presence should not contain your children. Your presence should give them expression. They should see you and want to express. It is in the course of expressing that I say, hey, no, that's strange expression. Why are you cursing? We don't curse in this house. Why not? They see you, they are contained, and when you are out, they blossom. There is a problem with our fatherhood. So we need to acknowledge, no doubt, this is how it is. But we need to redirect that this is how it should be when it comes to fatherhood.
Thank you, Mr. Deji. You're someone that also redefine men to be better fathers. How do you think we can deconstruct this for people to know that this is how it is, but it's not meant to be that way?
Well, obviously, people like Kinglsey, myself, and every other person who believes in, dealing with what we call toxic masculinity need to begin to speak out like we're doing today, and also to begin to set examples. Because like he said, when you walk into a space and your children feel frozen, or they feel they can't express themselves, then what you're doing literally is not giving them the wings to fly, because children will always, look for expression. So our responsibility, like you said, is to create a relationship that guides them through life, and that guidance is in the context of a relationship. So really, what we need to do is to be able to say, these are children coming from such homes, and that is basically the conversation that we're having. And when they can see those examples, they can see that the children are disciplined, they can see that they are focused, and they've been running in an environment that is not, like you said, stick and so many things and everything, and you're still able to pick up the conversation. Yeah, I grew up with a dad who was very in charge, royalty obviously, and the way royalty is, the ones that must be feared, money, worship, women, everything. Obviously somebody who probably just knew that it was typical African perspective of, hey, you have to toughen up every child and everything. So when you are he that must be feared, you walk into a space and then everybody takes cover. So what that does for you is, many African homes have, have that same scenario where you hear the horn, everybody starts looking for where to hide or where to jump into, and it's not a place where, like he was saying, that it brings presence, a secure presence, a loving presence, a confident presence. What you hear is fear, and once you introduce fear to a child, then he begins to doubt himself, he begins to think low of himself, he begins to ask questions. And what that did to me was obviously to know that I was gifted, but there was something wrong. It was just like we kept talking about the fact that the father is a role model and a coach and a mentor. That's one person who helps you discover your giftings, who's there to walk with you in the process of discovering who you are, your gifting, your talents and everything, and to guide you. When that is not in the radar, you now begin to, you're lost. So obviously you distort, you're not confident in yourself. So obviously it comes with the thing, low self-esteem, poor self-image, victim mentality. It just comes with the baggage. And then you grow up trying to find yourself, trying to see if, and then if you have the misfortune of having friends around you who are even worse than you, it's just like it's just a journey, and that's how it goes. So for me, it took years and years and years of, for lack of a better word, consistent conversation from my mom to say you can't, because the damage had been done. So we had to go through many years of saying you can't be this, you can't be that. But there's something special when it comes from the dad, like we said, that presence, that should have been able to give you that jump start in life to say, hey, when you look behind you, your dad is there, you can face anything. So when is your mom that has to start saying, yeah, my son, it doesn't just really sit the way it's supposed to be. So for me, it was a long struggle until getting to a point in life where you have to do a rediscovery, which I keep talking about, redefining manhood. You do a rediscovery of manhood. You redefine what it is, and then you go through that process of whatever emotional dysfunction it is, and then you come out stronger each day and help yourself that you don't allow your children go through that.
And I know that we're talking about fatherless sons, but just something you spoke about, how having that affirmation or reaffirmation from a father goes a long way. And it just, because I didn't grow up with my dad. My mom is in Nigeria, my father was in South Africa, and just takes me back to this moment. I think when I was traveling to South Africa and I was living with him and I'd passed matric, and that was like the first time in my whole life, first and only till now, that he's like, I'm so proud of you. And it just hit me that this is maybe 7-8 years ago, and I can remember the exact moment. I can remember the way that I felt in that moment. And I'm just talking about it now because you said that. I'm thinking in retrospect how sad it is that those are moments that we cherish so much, while it's actually meant to be something that is regular, something that is consistent in your life. So it's like if you had that kind of affirmation, if you had that kind of love as a normal foundation in your relationship or in your family, the difference is obviously clear. But in Nigeria, it seems like this conversation is a very elite conversation. I'm just going to put it out there, that by the time we air this, people are going to be like, we've not eaten. Is this what you're talking about? Because it seems like such an elite conversation that even someone like me, that apparently I'm very self-aware, never really understood the impact it had on me until we're having this conversation right now. So for many people who might be fatherless sons, whether the father is present or the father is emotionally absent in that relationship might not understand the impact that the lack of a father figure have in their life. Some people just don't know. They just think that is how, that's what life be, that's how they're meant to be. So what are some of the impacts that you believe that, being a fatherless son can have on a young boy or a young man in our community?
Well, let me take you back a little bit, or maybe should I say digress. A majority of us are fatherless, actually, in the real sense.
Yeah.
I work with teenagers and kids, and each time you are constantly seeing these traces of lack of a healthy relationship with their fathers. You see it everywhere. The proliferation of campus cults. What does it tell you? A boy who is affirmed, a boy who has no point to prove, a boy who doesn't feel part of being a man is trying to prove a point to a woman, won't get involved in violence. So the degree of violence you see around is a sign of fatherlessness. In the prisons, there are 75,000 prisoners in Nigeria. About 68,000 are, only 2,500 are girls. The rest are boys, are men. What does that tell you? If you stand on the road, you will see more boys roaming than most of the girls you're going to see. They're either carrying a bag, going somewhere, going to buy something, or hawking. Most of the guys you likely see are just roaming. So the point I'm making is that it is a symptom. What I just painted, there are symptoms. And what are those symptoms? It is a symptom of fatherlessness. Fatherlessness, not just physical presence. Like I always say, a father who is physically present but irresponsible is worse than no father.
Yeah.
So most of us never really grew up having a father we could showcase. Yeah, except we want to, knowing what we know now, if we want to have another father, I can assure you, on top of my head, I can tell you that 50% of boys will want to have a different father. And that's huge.
That's huge.
Yes.
That's very huge.
Including girls. Go and ask around. If you produce 10 girls now and tell them how many of you had a father that you wish to marry, a father whose attributes you want in a husband, I can assure you, without meeting those ladies, half of them will tell you, sorry, I don't want to marry the kind of father I had. And so it tells you that, like I always put this blame, our social institutions have not helped us in terms of fatherhood. Be it the church, be it the media, be it the schools, of course, not even the government. All our our institution of culture and socialization have not helped because they don't even understand. You go to you attend PTA meetings, you have only mothers there, and you ask the school, what would you do to compel fathers to attend this meeting? I said, there's nothing we can do. I said, but you know how to collect school fees. Is it possible to create an incentive that if fathers attend XYZ number of meetings, they get these rebates? That way people start to see fatherhood and fathering as a critical component of our social life.
Something that is actually meant to be an active, conscious decision.
Not just decision. A critical component of our social life. That way you know that, okay, fathers are not here. Sorry, we're not doing anything. Meeting closed.
I think it also goes back to, like, you're just talking about how the social element of even culture comes into play here, where caretaking is a woman's job. Because I attend my sister's end of the year parties and PT, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because I always complain whenever I go for these events, only women. The men are not, and I'm like, where are the fathers? People say, well, these mothers are housewives or they have shops, so the fathers are in schools. And I'm like, are you trying to tell me fathers who have never witnessed their children perform in any school activity? They only come for big events, and that is like graduation, not even primary school graduation, because that still is a small event. So university graduation, that is where you start.
Sorry to interrupt. If I run a school and I record attendance at PTA, is part of the child's results, and I have my, you are graded. You grade attendance in class, math, all of those tests. And there's a column for father's attendance at PTA. It's 5 marks. Your child, that 5 marks, if that is what your child needs to win a scholarship, you lose it. Yeah. So that way we can make a statement. We can send a statement to whoever wants to come to our school that here, fathering is, we don't kid with it. We don't take it lightly. But in a case where you go for a PTA meeting, you have over 200 200 children. A PTA meeting, you want to see at least, let's even say 50 couples, man and wife. You have mothers everywhere. Yeah. And you're asking, is this a school for single moms? You get the point now. So nobody is reacting. Nobody is bending over to send a very, very defining and eloquent message that we are serious here. Go to our churches, it's the same thing. You're bringing a child to Sunday school, the mother drops the child. You're coming for rehearsal, the mother drops the child. Whatever it is the mothers. That boy grows up with a mentality that fathers are not meant to be responsible. So, so when you receive the announcement for PTA, you forward it to your wife because that is her duty. And so the cycle continues. It keeps going on and on. But we need to allow, our state social institutions need to wake up and see that, look, this thing is not helping us. More boys are missing it by the day. More boys are derailing by the day. If you go to courts, you see the divorce cases. And like I put I take responsibility for divorces on the part of the men. That is debatable. Maybe you may want to do another show on that. But when your father didn't do a good job of modeling the right husband, telling you, son, did you see what I'm doing at home? This is how to love a wife. This is what to make. This is the sacrifice you make when you get married. These are the things. The boy will want to even beat the father to it. But when there's nobody, your mother has always been battered and she's always regretting marrying your father. If he's not a turnaround man, obviously he's going to repeat, if not worsen that.
Yeah, such an interesting point. And just like Mr. Deji, I read something, I think a tweet of yours, where you said that we raise men to lack capacity in processing pain, so they are strong in their hands, but they are weak in their heart. I really, really like this tweet, by the way. But I want you to expatiate on what this tweet means and how it relates to what you do, because you do counsel men and you see these young boys and you see men who have grown from broken boys to these men right now who do not have the capacity, like you tweeted, to handle pain. How do we deal with that, and how often do you even notice this?
Well, I think it's part of the social construct in this side of the world that what it means to be a man is to be able to exact force and to be able to be violent. So being violent is synonymous with being a man. And what that teaches you is the fact that it's okay for a man to use violence to solve problems. Now, if you sit down with life, you understand that violence doesn't solve life problems. There are other mechanisms, there are other tools, relationship, talking, communication. Those are ways, So when you raise boys to be weak in those areas, and you strengthen the violence, and you don't strengthen the core or the tools you need to solve situations, you're going to have problems. So like we said, you're weak here because when you define, we all keep saying that love is the greatest force in the world. Love is not weak, love is strong, and love is an internal conversation. So for when you say to a man, like we bring them up, that it is weakness to love or to show affection or to care, to show emotion, what you do is weaken the center where they need strength, because look at life. Forgiving somebody takes strength. Being patient with somebody takes strength. Being loving towards somebody takes strength. Being kind takes strength. Decided perseverance, not like we normally talk about conflict resolution. It takes a lot of strength to be able to hold restraint. When you are weak there, you would live by reaction. You would use violence. You would jump. And anybody that's what's happening everywhere. When you do that, it means you are weak, because that's actually where you need to be strong. Because for you to be able to maintain and to have successful relationships in life, that's the core of where it sits, because your relationship will demand a lot of back and forth and give and take. So when you are strong in violence and you are weak at the center of life itself, then you won't have capacity to be able to build or maintain any relationship. If a woman sees you that a very handsome, hot guy marries you, then she's married, but then you now don't have the capacity to maintain that relationship because you're not patient, you're not kind, you're not this. So where you really need the strength, you don't have. So it's capacity. So and that is still the narrative we bring boys up with, like Kinglsey was saying earlier, that just donate sperm to the woman you are legally married to or not legally married to, and then leave her to solve the problem. The only thing you owe her is either send money when you can, and even if you can't, you'll sort herself out. So we just continue the cycle of raising irresponsible adults called men, and then the cycle just continues, and there's nobody to model a different reality to men. So so for me, like he would say, I would never question the level of gender-based violence you will get anywhere in the world now, because it's a matter of disaster waiting to happen. When you strengthen men here and they are weak here, what they will do is left to your imagination. It will never be a surprise, because this is where strength is and not here, because instructions from here comes from here, and if that can't happen, then you're just leaving it open to anything.
You know, there's a lot of drinking dens around town.
We need to talk about that, because it also seems like I got back, just sorry to cut you, I got back into the country and I stay in Okota. Oh my God, every street has a joint, in quotes, and it's so normalized. It's business now. It's business, and I'm glad that you want to bring it up, because it is a symptom of something.
Yeah, it's just what we're talking about. These are men.
I asked a question in a southwestern state in Nigeria. I won't mention the name of the state, and I said, "What is the most thriving business here?" And they said, "No, they give it a glorified name, lounge." He said, "Just open a lounge, you would have, the money is crazy."
And it's a reflection. It's a reflection. These guys have been groomed, directly or indirectly, consciously or unconsciously, to find socialization amongst their ilks. And you met a father who, when your mother is having an issue with him and the guy is not willing to engage, he gets out of the house. Like they say, pick the key and drive off. And goes to the den. So now the 21st century has glamorized it. So you have a viewing center, you have everything, but what is it feeding on? It is feeding on a dysfunction. It's feeding on a dysfunction that is created by the fatherhood crisis.
So we just make the dens more stylish and more exotic, but it's still a den. It's just somewhere to drink away the pain you will not face.
The inability of men to engage. One of the things I do is to help couples address their communication problems. We were taught to talk, but not to create, not to communicate, not to listen, and So all of us boys got married, and we are stuck. So you have a lady, you can't. So after the wedding, you are moving. So the guy comes in, and you are saying, you are having a monosyllabic conversation. Are you fine? Yes. Have you eaten? Yes. Do you want food? No. Will you sleep? Yes. Do you want water? No. And so most homes, that is what's going on, because our parents were not communicating and were not taught. But when this same guy gets to the drinking den, you see your husband that the guy can hold a conversation for 2 hours himself alone, and his gang. And you're wondering, is this not the husband that I married? How come you get home, you're not talking? And now here you are. That is a dysfunction. So back to our social institutions. We need to, first of all, acknowledge that we have a crisis.
Because it is a crisis.
Yes. We have a crisis, and it affects every one of us. Every one of us. You are either raising a son, or you're raising someone that is going to marry a son. So whichever way, we're all connected with this issue. So can we take that responsibility to say, look, this crisis, this is how I want to contribute to solving it. If you are a church, you have a leader pastored by a man, what did you go through to become the pastor that you are today, and you're leading 5,000 people? But you need to be honest enough to know that these 5,000 people, the men amongst them, have the same dysfunctions that you went through when you were small, when you were a little boy growing up. Some of them had no fathers, some had fathers, but they were as good as not existing. So if you can own up to the reality that you had a dysfunctional childhood, then these men who you pastor, they have issues. And so find a way to solve that issues for them. First of all, talk about them. Talk about them. How come we have men who find it easier to beat up their wife than to engage with their wives? How come you have men who find it easy to walk out of the house and not come back for 3-4 days than to sit down and say, sweetheart, can we talk this thing over? How come we have men who find it very easy, to ask for sex, but find it difficult to discuss, plan, strategize, and create values that a family, that a home needs to build upon? So it's been moving from generation.
I hope that one day we get to that level where we can have this conversation on a bigger platform, like you said, in church. Because for a pastor, a father to even come out and say, "Oh, I had a dysfunctional, childhood," they need to know that they had one. Some people don't know that what they had is even a dysfunction.
Or
they just accepted it.
That is the word. It's accepting. Yes, I mean, we could have continued to pretend that we're all cool, nice-looking guys, driving range and wearing designer shoes, and we could continue to pretend that way until we get to the point where a demand is placed on our capacity to build as men, on our values as men. And when I say values, I always say this: we never really had values.
What do you mean we never really had values?
Values that are not tested are no values. You get what I mean? If this house is solid, the only way you will know it is solid is when there's a rainstorm and the house is still standing. Say, wow, that's a solid house. But when you build a house and the next storm that comes crashes the house, you don't have a house. So most of us, the values that we gloat over are really not values, because some of those values, when they were tested, they all came crashing like a pack of cards. The reality of the 21st century has taught us one good lesson, that most of the men you see around were raised without values. Because if you're raised with values, why would you go and end up in a drinking den when you have issues with your wife? Why would you not show up when your child needs you most? Why would you break up your marriage over flimsy issues because there's another girl you want to marry, so you just need an excuse to jump off with her? And so on and so forth. The rate of advanced fee fraud we see around is a reflection of lack of values. But you see, these realities are actually testing the values, the so-called values we said we had. We never had values. If we had values, they would stand the test of time.
They will stand the test of time. Just even, I think maybe 2-3 months ago, I did a video like this as well, but with single mothers. So I just brought 3 random single mothers together, and we're talking about the issue of being a single mother in Nigeria. And sadly, one common theme, every single lady, they spoke about how the men were not present in the lives of the children. One woman said she hasn't seen the father for 17 years. He knows he has a child.
It's difficult to be present when you live in the same house.
He knows that he had.
Deji, it's difficult to be present when you live in the same house, let alone
when you are
not in the same place. I mean, but like you said again, it seems like we are grooming and enabling irresponsible men, because these are men who might just call the woman and say, today I want to see my daughter out. So they see the daughter maybe once in 5 months, when they just want to see that my daughter is looking well or my son is looking well. How can we deal with this? Because it's not enough to just have these conversations, because there are real life consequences. There are people that are living these lives that they don't see their fathers, and the fathers only come once in a blue moon. And what makes me scared about this issue is the fact that I'm not even talking about daddyless girls, because that is a whole different conversation if we start that. It's that young boys who do not see their fathers present, and whenever these fathers come home, begin to do everything possible to show that father that I'm a man, or I want you to give me your love. So they begin to put themselves in destructive relationship, whether with other men or even with their fathers, and begin to glamorize what the fathers have and think that it is the normal way for a man to behave. How can we do it? It was really, really troubling, because even apart from that, when the video did go up, I had a lot of backlash from young men again, telling me that these single mothers are the ones refusing for them to see their children. So it seems like there is a dilemma where something doesn't add up. It's either the women are lying or the men are just refusing to acknowledge the fact that they are irresponsible. What's happening?
Well, from my own perspective, I'm sure Kinglsey will add more light. There's dysfunction on both sides. There's dysfunction on both sides, and like he said, no values. Let's be honest with ourselves, and also to understand that the social institutions that shape culture have shown to us that we're in a very bad quagmire, because the institutions have not been able to interconnect and create a society that says these are the values we stand for, and they will not shift. So when that doesn't happen, we would have irresponsible people on both sides. But because we are male, we are speaking from the men perspective of saying this is how society has raised us to be. Can we begin to deconstruct? But when something has formed culture, when something is the norm, when something is the societal expectation, it is cast in stone. It's going to take a lot of conversations. It's going
a counterculture
will be challenged, and for example, people, that's why you got a backlash, because everybody just feels comfortable in that plays the victim and refuses to accept responsibility. If you whittle down everything to a father bringing up a child, what does he want that child to learn? Accept responsibility.
Let's start from the basics. Man, woman come together, conflict, the pathways, isn't it? There's a child in the room. Now, the child lacks a father. Now, custody is with the mother. Back to the root. We're not saying divorces don't happen. But if you enjoy the love, the everything that a parent should give, including providing the foundation for you to build your values, and somehow things happen, your marriage fails, you would want your child to enjoy what you had. You know what I mean? You wouldn't want that child to lack the values that brought you to where you are, even though your marriage has failed, which is not a crime. So what would you do? You will want to call the man and say, guy, come. Yeah, we've had our issues. You're going your way, I'm going my way. But this guy, he mustn't suffer for our stupidity. In other words, what I got from my dad and what you got from your dad, we mustn't deny this child. That's, that parenting, that fathering. You get the point? And so, both man and woman, though they've separated or divorced, they will want to fashion out a co-parenting strategy. I'm not divorced. I have never been, and I won't be. However, if I were properly raised, get it, foundational, if I had the right parental upbringing, and I get married and the marriage fails, I would not want my children to lack the parenting that I got. You know what I mean now? Yes. So I will do my part. Because my husband has moved on, I will need to talk sense into his head and say, guy, we're no longer married, but how can we help these children? How can you give what you have while I'm giving what I have, so we can have a round out children while you're still married to your woman, and I'm trying to also find my way with my man. This child shouldn't. Now, as a mother who has custody, if I'm remarrying, the guy I'm going to marry, my priority, aside the fact that I want a relationship, to say, guy, I have a child that needs a father.
My next question was stepfathers. How do women with children know when a man is good enough to step in as a father figure?
That's a long thing. Now, so my children, their need for a father will become part of the priority. Yes, I need love, isn't it? I need romance. But I have children. I can't deny that I don't have them. They exist.
But the truth is, the sorry to butt in there, is that the reality is, I've heard so many single mothers say that the men they want them, but don't want them with the children. So you see them giving their children to their mothers. Then the children are either growing up with the aunts or they're growing up with the grandmothers. Or the children come and live there, but there is no love. It is the reality at hand.
I always say this. Not every man can marry a single mother. Not every man should marry a single mother. If you're a single mom and you're smart, you should not date any man. One of the cross you have to carry the moment you become a single mother is that not every man is good enough for you. Ordinarily, as a single lady, you won't marry everybody. But when you become a single mom, the standard even goes higher. Yeah. Single mothers who bring the standard down, they all pay for it.
Yeah, but like in society, I understand where they're coming from, because also, in as much as we say that the standard should even get higher, in reality, they are the ones that are lowered, because people now look at them as inferior to just single mothers. So it seems
it's a misnomer. That's the misnomer I need us to address. You see, not every man can become a father even before they become a husband.
Preach.
It takes. They are not 10 for 10 kobo around. The man that can become a daddy the moment he's saying I do is rare. So that's the person you need. He must be ready to be a father even before the first sex. Because Take it or leave it, unless you want to pretend. The single mother who has been used to romance and sex wants to continue her life. Often that is the priority. But you have a son, you have a daughter. And in some cases, you have a son and a daughter. The man you are talking with cannot pretend those two people don't exist. Those people have become part of your life. Why we believe you have a life to live, these children, the person who is going to marry them must have a heart large enough to become their father. Not I don't use the word stepfather. It's a father. I have 2 adopted kids. And I know what it takes to have them in my life. So, if you're a single mom, whether 1, 2, or 3, you can't be playing around a guy who is not ready to become a father. And don't forget, becoming a father, even before you say I do, is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And it's not for boys.
Honestly, I believe that.
And don't also forget, society hasn't produced, we don't have the template for producing those kind of men.
How do we create that template? Because I was headed to the next question. You spoke about it, not at Mr. Deji, where we said that we are not reacting enough. We need a counterculture to show people this is how it's meant to be. How do we start that counterculture? How do we create a template for young men and fathers to know that this is actually how it's meant to be? There is a problem, there is a crisis, let us solve it. Mr. Deji, what do you think?
Well, I think Kinglsey was going to help me there because it's what he works on most of the time.
It goes back, sorry Deji, it goes back to the institutions that we defer to. How can the court punish erring fathers? How do we get the court to call erring fathers to order? How can our sisters know that you can go to court to compel an irresponsible man to be responsible?
Yeah. I think there is also a learned helplessness. Because when I speak to these women as well, they go, they say, I don't have the strength. Let me just face my children. And I think they don't see that it does more harm. But also on the other side, I understand that I don't want my child to see me forcing their father to be a father to them.
No. The boy will know that if you grow up and become irresponsible, the state will have to curse your head, like you say in Nigeria, to be correct, isn't it? If you embrace madness as a boy, who should know that being a man is not a child's play? Somebody should compel you. And that's why I also feel that there's a generational implication in all of this. I am a father. I have 4 kids. I'm playing my role. I have 3 girls and a boy. Part of what I'm modeling to them is that we have a home, not just a house. If you go out there and you have a problem, please come back. I'm here. So, if my daughter gets married, or if any of my daughters get married, and she's having a crisis in her home, why am I there? I need to step in. You understand? So, one of the problems I see, and which is grave indeed, is our girls don't even have a relationship with their fathers that they can latch into when they have a crisis in their marriage. So you have a lady who married because she wanted to run away from home.
Exactly.
And she runs into a storm. She can't come home.
Yeah.
So if I sustain the kind of relationship that I have with my daughters and they run into a storm in their marriage, please, with all pleasure, come back home and start life afresh. So I will become a father to whatever children. So if you, the husband, you want to have, you want to reenact whatever relation, you will have me to do it. You get the point? So that's why I said, our social structures, we need to strengthen them at all strata. You get grandfather, father, and all. So if you marry a lady and you know that this lady's father, the guy doesn't buy you messing around, And she tells you, guy, you want to marry me? Okay, come and see my father. And the day you're meeting the man tells you, guy, this is how we play here. How do you play where you're coming from? And you bramble around, the guy says, oh, guy, we no blend. You walk away. But when he assesses you and believes that, look, I think this guy is from a home. Can I see your father? And you all meet and you share values. It's like Deji and if Deji and I and we are talking and his son wants to marry, the guy knows Alpha. We know Alpha. The boy knows that he will have to walk with his head if he starts misbehaving. And that is the way it should be. Families need to be strengthened to the point where all of these anomalies that we see in society, we can handle it within the family environment. And if we cut off, we have our institutions. The law is there, and the court is there. The church is there.
Because
the mosque are there.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, previously when we were talking about, strengthening the institutions. For example, like I normally will advocate. How can we? What process do people go through before they get married? How mature are these people get married? How do these institutions ensure that only married people get married? I would say to myself, you have to have compulsory, premarital classes that are very extensive. You have to have very extensive parenting classes, because you find out that people just get married, people start raising children, and they're clueless.
That you're referring to our social institutions now.
Institutions.
Good. That is.
But when you're born, these are steps that you have to just go through. You're not thinking, am I ready for it? Is this something I want? It's just you must do it now. So the team be.
To these institutions, which is supposed to be a second line, are the things that should happen in the house. Yes, you see, if you're raised properly, sweetheart, you won't have any need for single fellowship. It's just to go and find somebody there, but not for them to be teaching you what your parents ought to have taught you. You get the point? Because what do we do there? We talk about
marriage, relationship,
dating, and so on and so forth. Is it not?
Yeah.
You should have seen dating in action at home. Is it not? Yeah. All of that things being equal.
Yeah.
If you were raised in a functional home, isn't it? Yeah. Stable, ideal home, you would have witnessed so many things and had interactions. Mom and dad, how did you meet? This guy, he was always coming around to this one, that one. You hear the story. You see them. They are 20 years, 25, 30, married. It's your turn now. So, mommy, Alpha, she would have been telling you things. Daddy would have been telling you things. So, what would they tell you in single fellowship? You would have. You have seen everything. Yeah. But because we have homes that are not, so our churches are social institutions. Now take up that role. Let's have a fellowship. Let's build capacity. Let's train. Let's create values. And above all, let's create room for people to mingle and all of that stuff.
Well, just before we round up, I just have 2 more points and we'll round up. We're running out of time. The issue of abuse, it's something that we all talk about on our different platforms. When we have fatherless boys, I think it's difficult for children to report abuse, whether the father or the mother is present. When we now have fatherless boys, who are these boys going to talk to when they are being exposed to any form of abuse? How do these boys phantom what is happening to them or what they are experiencing at the moment? It's like I'm giving my side eye. I am talking to you because I want you to give me the answer to this. He told me that I'm not going to ask him certain questions because it's in his book. He wants people to buy the book. So I'm just coming in from the side to ask the question. How do we deal with this? Because it seems it's like, who are you? Girls can report to their mothers if they have the ability or the connection with their mothers, but the boys, I don't see how likely it is for a boy to report maybe the sexual abuse or whatever to the mom. Who do they report to?
A fatherless boy is already an abused boy. He's abused already. So you're not talking about the different. How? But Deji, I just found out lately that there are more men were sexually abused than we know. Yeah. So most fathers of today were abused as boys. That's the truth. But some didn't see it as abuse. They didn't notice what was going on to them. What was happening. So, and these abuses, came in different forms. Is either your sister dressing up or undressing in front of you, aunt dressing up, undressing in front of you, your sister's friend visiting and dressing up in front of you. That is abuse. Running into adults watching pornography movie, that is abuse. So it is not everybody who were penetrated and all of that while growing up. A lot of us, our abuse came in diverse forms, and it is abuse all the same. Some
that became normalized.
Yes. Some of us stumbled on our parents having sex. It is abuse. So that's what I'm saying. If you want to situate it, it's a big kettle of fish. But the one that the child reports, which I think you're talking about, is violations. When maybe the child is being penetrated or somebody has sexually assaulted the child. Yeah. Who will the child report to? For a boy, I'm sorry. He's not going to tell anybody unless he's been groomed to do so. And most abusers groom the boy or the child not to tell. So if the boy has been groomed not to tell, obviously he's not going to tell anybody.
And I mean, it's even more difficult when the abuser is a man.
Yeah. If the abuser is a man and the abuser has groomed the boy to keep it secret, it's going to be a secret. That's the truth. Nobody knows about that I was abused. That's why I said it's about relationship. You have to have a relationship first of all. If I had a fantastic relationship with my dad, obviously, that's the truth. So it's about relationship. Then that relationship will have to be broken by the abuser if he or she can groom you. Predators also groom. So you will have to do a lot of work in grooming this child for that secret not to spill. So in my case, the abuser didn't even do any because there was no need. So it became a secret that we had to live with until God help us and we're able to, this was an abuse, and all of that. And like I always say, we became turnaround men who got to realize that this part, something has to happen here.
Something has to change.
Yes, something has to change here. But like I always say, a majority of men you see today start now to ask. A majority of them were abused as boys.
Wow.
Yes, and the abuse, like I said, is in different phases. It's either they were defied by way of penetration or violation, or they saw adults having sex, which is an abuse in itself. They were exposed to pornography, either visual, media, or real. And you know what I mean by media or real? In other words, either pornographic content or adults who inappropriately undressed in front of them.
Mr. Kinglsey, Mr. Deji, this conversation can go on for so long, but I know it is so packed. There's so much here that we can just go down and talk more. But I'm really, really grateful. The issue of fatherless son is an epidemic. It's a crisis, like you said. We need to create a counterculture, and I'm really, really glad that we're having this conversation. Finally, we have two great men. I'm going to tell people you're going to actually tell us how we can get in contact with you, because I am sure there are so many young men who have been looking for someone to just talk to. Sometimes they can't talk to a woman. They just want to talk to another man who understands what it means, who understands that aching. that emptiness, because there's like a vacuum there that they might not even understand what is missing. But talking and listening to what you said today might give them the opportunity to recognize that there is actually something missing in their life. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope we have you again, because there are so many conversations that we can have with you two men, and I'm really, really grateful. That's all I would say. I'm really grateful for you guys coming to the show, and I hope next time we'll speak more. We'll have more time. We'll have more guests. The goal is to actually have the next time we have this show, so call me when it doesn't happen. The next time we have an episode of Fatherless Sons, because we will again, because we said it's a crisis, we're trying to come up with a counterculture. I want to have a crowd of maybe 30, 40 fatherless sons having a conversation. Where it's not just, yes, it's not just two of us hearing what it's meant to be. I want to hear from young boys who say, this is what it would have meant to me to have a father. This is what it means to me to be a fatherless son. Because it is manifest in different ways in everyone's life. So yeah, that's something that I'm looking forward to. Thank you so much again for coming on the show. And I hope you, the viewers at home, enjoyed this conversation. Fatherless sons, the epidemic that is plaguing our society, our community, our country, our continent, Africa as a whole. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.